Rebbe's too. He was the private tutor of the Rebbe Rashab when he was a young man. And then when the Rebbe Rayatz became aged to leave Cheder, in other words, the Rebbe Rashab didn't want to learn anymore with other children, he should learn by himself. He hired his former Madrich to be the Friedrich Rebbe's Malamed. So the Friedrich Rebbe said that my father was very respectful of the Rashbat. The Rashbat was much older than the Rebbe Rashab. My father wanted me at a school. It was a private lessons, and the Rebbe Rashab was paying good money for it. He would never do it without Rishus. The Rashbatz was the employee and the Rebbe Rashab was the employer. But when there was a Seder that they not only learned together, the Friedrich Rebbe says they slept in the same room. They were roommates, and Rashbatz was alone. He was an elder Chassidus, he was alone. So the Hadracha was 24 hours a day, mamish. So the Friedrich Rebbe says if my father wanted to take me out of the Cheder, he would ask permission. So I don't know what day of the week it was. Tafresh Nun Beis, that means from this. It's 130 years ago exactly. Tafresh Nun Gimel, 130 years ago exactly. So the Rebbe Rashab sent his Meshodes to the Rashbatz to ask for permission. As 4 o'clock, he should let him out of the Cheder. The Rebbe wants to see him, and the Rashbatz gave permission. So 4 o'clock that afternoon, the Friedrich Rebbe went home from the Cheder. The Cheder was exactly one person. They were basically learning B'chavrusa, and he went into his father. His father had an office. And in front of the office there was another room that had only one door. So it was like private. There was a room that opened up into a room. And both of those rooms were the Rebbe Rashab's offices. The secretary would sit sometimes in the outside room. The Rebbe Rashab locked both doors, shouldn't be disturbed. And inside he had the Big Day Shabbos for the two of them. The Rebbe Rashab put in Big Day Shabbos, told the Friedrich Big Day Shabbos, and he told them, Gut Yom Tiv Uns. This happened 130 years ago today. Gut Yom Tiv Uns, Gut Yom Tiv to us. Heint is the Emotionality for the Shnei HaMe'edes HaGedolim. Today is the birthday of the two great luminaries. And the Rebbe Rashab told the Friedrich Rebbe the secret of Elul. That it's the birthday of the Baal Shem Tov, and it's the birthday of the Alter Rebbe. But it's the birthday of the Baal Shem Tov 3 times over. Begufoi, benafshei, ubenishmasei. He was born Elul Shnas Nachas, Tov Nun Ches, 1698. On his 26th birthday, Elul Tov Pei Daled, 1724, he met his teacher, Achi Hashiloini, who was the Rebbe of Eliyahu HaNavi in Zman Bayis Rishon, who came into this world to reveal to the Baal Shem Tov Pnimis HaTeirah Chassidus, which the Baal Shem Tov would reveal later. And 10 years later, also on his birthday, Elul Tov Tzadik Daled, 1734, the Baal Shem Tov revealed himself. So the Friedrich Rebbe writes that Elul is the birth of the Baal Shem Tov. Begufei was born. Ben Nafshei, he was introduced to Pnimis HaTeirah Chassidus, and Ben Nishmasei, he revealed himself as a Chassidish Rebbe, as the father of Chassidus. And then in Shnas Kahos, that's 1745, the Neshama Chadosha, the new Neshama of the Alter Rebbe, came down into this world. So when the Rebbe Rashab told this to the Friedrich Rebbe, the Bar Mitzvah Bocher, he said to him, Du zos nish megala zayin bis az man mesuyam. I'm revealing and telling this to you, but don't reveal it until a fixed amount of time passes. So the Friedrich Rebbe waited 50 years. On the 50th anniversary of his Bar Mitzvah, his Bar Mitzvah was Tammuz Tafresh Nun Gimel. That summer, Elul, he was just 13 in a couple of months. 50 years on, here in America, New York, the Friedrich Rebbe told this story. And this started a whole shturim, a new Yom Tov, the Yom Tov of Elul. A big Yom Tov, Elul, the birthday of the Baal Shem Tov and the birthday of the Alter Rebbe. It seems to me that Elul has a shaykhs to America. Because I read that there were Chassidim leaving to America in the 30s yet, before the war. The Friedrich Rebbe told them, you're going to America, tell them about the Yom Tov Elul. The Emuna is Shnei Meir Sakidel. So this year is 80 years, it's the 80th anniversary of the Yom Yom, as you mentioned. It's also the 80th anniversary of the Emuna of Shnei Meir Sakidel, and Hilchah Baal Shem Tov, and the Alter Rebbe. So, talk about the Baal Shem Tov, Baal Shem Tov's life. What's the story of Baal Shem Tov's life? What's the Baal Shem Tov's life? Baal Shem Tov's life, I think, can be defined by one word. By the word Ahava. The Baal Shem Tov's Metzias was such an unbelievable love for Yidden, not to be believed. I think it doesn't even Yom Yom. The Mezritcher Maggid says, I wish I would kiss a Sefer Torah, where the Baal Shem Tov would kiss little children. Baal Shem Tov's Avas Yisrael, Baal Shem Tov's Ahava for Yidden was unbound. It has no limits whatsoever. On a philosophical level, the Baal Shem Tov made a radical change in Judaism. Now I want to tell you something. I do not have a license to drive, okay? But I did the 6 hours. Why I don't have a license is another story. I did the 6 hours. Did anybody have a license? Anybody have a license? Yeah? You did the 6 hours? You got a license in New York? You got a license in New York. You did 6 hours. Do you know the meaning of the word center of gravity? When you're doing the study of the car, they said what center of gravity means? You have a car. The heaviest car, part of the car, has to be closest to the ground. This way the car doesn't tip over. It's a physics, okay, physics. But I know it from my 6 hours in the license, which I never got. But I did the 6 hours. Yiddishkeit has a center of gravity. Now the word gravity in Yiddishkeit is a pun. Gravity means the heaviest thing, and gravity also means the most severe thing. Grave, right? Gravity. The Baal Shem Tov changed the center of gravity of Yiddishkeit. He changed what's the most important thing. Until the Baal Shem Tov, the most important thing was Teda Mitzvahs. You're a Jew because you practice Teda Mitzvahs. The Baal Shem Tov changed that fundamentally. You practice Teda Mitzvahs because you're a Jew. And the first truth in the Eibishter's creation is a Yid. The Medrash says that Eloyah Navi says, we say in Rashi and Chumash, Bereishis bara Elokim, right? Bereishis is in Rosh Tevis, Beis Reishis. There's two things that become before anything else, Torah and Yidden. So Eloyah Navi says, okay, I know there's two things that come before anything else, but which of those two comes before the other? And Eloyah Navi answers, since the Torah speaks to Yidden, Dabar b'nei Yisrael, Tzavas b'nei Yisrael, so this is the Lashon of the Medrash, Omer ani, Eloyah Navi says, I say, Machshavton shal Yisrael, Kod malachol davar, afilu lemachshavat haTorah. The thought of the Jewish people comes before everything, even before the thought of the Torah. This Medrash, in my humble opinion, is the foundational Chazal for Chassidus. Chassidus teaches us that a Jew is the most precious thing. It doesn't matter what kind of Jew he is, it doesn't matter what he does, he's a Yid. Of course, a Yid should do the right thing, a Yid should live the right way. Why? Because he'll be a better Yid. Or to say it in Chassidish Oasis, it'll help him reveal his Yidhood, help him discover what a Yid is. But the Baal Shem Tov taught that the preciousness of a Yid is absolute. The worst Jew is a Jew, period. The preciousness of a Yid is Baal Shem Tov's uftu. And the Baal Shem Tov's whole life was Avos Yisrael. His whole life was Avos Yisrael. Everything about it was Avos Yisrael. And he gave us Chassidus. The Baal Shem Tov gave us till the end of time. The Baal Shem Tov gave us until the end of time the gift of Chassidus. What's the gift of Chassidus? The gift of Chassidus, you know from the story, it's the precious stone which is the base of the king's crown. You know that story, right? The Alter Rebbe explained that the king has a crown, and inside the crown there's a stone. And if you take that stone out, you have to destroy the crown. And you grind the stone up into a powder, and you hope that the princess is still alive, and you feed the powder to the child, maybe he'll recover. Chassidus is that precious stone. Even Tevye Kesamach, this is Chassidus. It's a koyach. Chassidus is a koyach. And Baal Shem Tov gave it to all the Rebbes, to all the tzaddikim, including the Alter Rebbe. And the Alter Rebbe created a unique form of Chassidus, which is called Chabad, Chochma Bina V'das, where he actually gave the stone to each of us. But that I'm going to talk about in the next hour. What I want to talk to you about is the Baal Shem Tov. Baal Shem Tov brought into the world the Even Teish B'Kesar HaMelech, the precious stone, which is at the base of the king's crown. What is this precious stone? What is this precious stone? Kinderlach, what is this stone which is the base of the king's crown? Yidden. The answer to the question is the precious stone which is the base of the king's crown is the idea that our connection to Hashem doesn't pass through our brain. Our connection to Hashem doesn't pass through our heart. Our connection to Hashem is direct. We have a Yechidish Nefesh of a Paltiel Yid, and the Paltiel Yid gives us an inherent connection to Hashem, an absolute connection to the Eibishter, on a Yechidah level, on the highest possible level. And it translates into The idea that the way a Yid relates to the Eibishter is not reasonable at all. You cannot explain a Yid's connection to the Eibishter. Because it's an atzmiyistic bond, it's an absolute bond. A few years ago, I was in the other building, I was teaching seminary Allo. In those days, the whole seminary was in the other building. A girl comes to school, Chanukah. You know how people make, on Facebook, you could make, very easily, you can make advertisements. You take a page and you decorate it, so it was Chanukah time. And a lot of Freie Yidden struggle with Jewish identity Chanukah time because the Goyim have the tree and the gifts and the other Narishkeiten, and they never got deprived. A guy wrote an article in the New York Times. A guy wrote an article in the New York Times and he says, I studied Chanukah. And I found out there were two kinds of Yidden. There were Yevonim and there were Yidden and there were Misyavnim. There were good Jews and bad Jews. I'm one of the bad Jews. So why am I celebrating Chanukah? He asks the question, why am I celebrating? And he answers, the article finishes, that Santa shouldn't win. That's how he finishes his article. So somebody wrote a page on Facebook and said, I love the Jewish religion. I love the Jewish religion. It's the only religion we could be an atheist, and yes, and I'm still a Jew. You're an atheist and I'm still a Jew. So I'm asking you, what kind of atheist is that? If you're an atheist, what does the Jew mean? What does it mean to be a Jew? What does it mean? A social club. You get an advance in your education, you make a better career move. What's good about being a Jew if not religion? So he says, I'm an atheist. It's the only religion. I'm an atheist and I'm still, it's true. Right? There's no such thing as a Freie Christian. A Freie Christian is not a Christian anymore. There's no such thing as a Freie Muslim. There's only such a thing as a Freie Yid. Favos? Because a Yid's connection to the Eibishter is not connected to what he does. And here's a man who says openly, I'm an atheist, but thank God. I don't believe in God, but thank God I'm still Jewish, verstehst. This koyach exists in the neshama of every Yid. Chassidus is the power to touch this, to trigger this, and to wake it up. And the Baal Shem Tov brought this koyach into the world. And he gave it to the tzaddikim, Talmidei Baal Shem Tov, and then they gave it to their Talmidim. The koyach of Chassidus is that our relationship with the Eibishter doesn't have to be justified by the brain. It doesn't even have to be justified by the heart. It's justified entirely by the direct involvement with the neshama. That's Chassidus. And the Baal Shem Tov gave this koyach. Baal Shem Tov gave this koyach. Verstehst, when you read on the essence of Chassidus, which the Rebbe gave out, whenever the Rebbe gave it out, the Maimer, in Yonah Shoteres Chassidus, on the essence of Chassidus. So on the very first page, it says the Chassidus is four things. What is the first of the four? Do you remember? That it wakes a person up from a state of faint. It wakes a person up. Chassidus is a koyach that a Yid is fainted. He's not sleeping, he's fainted. His chayes was nostalgic. He's alive, but he has no ability to express his life. Chassidus brings a person back. The koyach of Chassidus is that it touches and it reaches and it awakens a faint Yid. A Yid is in a state of faint. The Baal Shem Tov gave this koyach, this holiness, this potency, this power, you understand? That's what the Baal Shem Tov did. But the Baal Shem Tov's approach, what the Rebbe calls Baal Shem Tov in the Maggid, Chassidus HaKlalis, the general Chassidus. And the other Chassidish Rebbe, they call it Chassidus Chagas. And we are called Chassidus Chabad. What you have to understand about Chassidus is that, like everything else, Chassidus needs packaging. I mean, again, I'm sure you girls are very sophisticated, and very educated, and very learned, and very up to date. So you probably know better than I the difference between buying a cheap vitamin and an expensive vitamin. Besides for the fact that the pharmaceutical company is making more money. Yeah? You get the same vitamin for $7 a bottle and for $50 a bottle. Why would you spend $50 rather than $7? One has sugar, one doesn't. Okay. There's all kinds of answers, but one of the answers, one of the most important answers to the question is, how many vitamins you take is not important. It's how much your body absorbs them. And the difference between a cheap vitamin and an expensive vitamin is the ability for the body to break it down. You take a cheap vitamin, it has all the ingredients in it, but it goes in and goes out. An expensive vitamin, and again, I'm not a chemist, and I'm certainly not a doctor, so I don't know which vitamin you should or shouldn't take, which ones the generic brands are okay, but this, what I just said, is a truth. That the difference between one pill and another pill, they both have the same ingredients, is whether your body will recognize that this is good for it and break it down and absorb it, or the body will think that it's nothing and just send it out the way it came in, and then you're not helped. You're not helped by taking vitamins, you're helped by processing vitamins. And Chassidus is a pill that needs to be processed, you see? Chassidus is a pill that needs to be processed. Chassidus is an akud, it's a pintel, it's a point, it's a simple point. And in the Baal Shem Tov's world, and in the Baal Shem Tov's form, and in the Baal Shem Tov's words, the Chassidus is the Even Tev Shebekesed HaMelech, it's the precious stone which is the base of the king's crown, that brings out the connection between Yid and the Eibishter, which is completely above any kind of reason. But the Baal Shem Tov didn't just say, you have a neshama, a pintel Yid. The Baal Shem Tov said, we're going to wake that neshama up. We're going to find form, we're going to find language, we're going to find technique, we're going to find tools, we're going to find ways that this pintel Yid should be accessed. And that's Chassidus, you see? Chassidus is not only that I have a neshama, or a yechida, a pintel Yid, but that the yechida that I have actually has to do with my daily life. So how did the Baal Shem Tov do it? He created a culture, a way of life. He created a culture. The Baal Shem Tov, what's the culture? How do Chassidim live? Right? If you'll ask people out there, food is very important. They're eating kishken, kugel, and chol, don't you name it, yeah? The culture of Chassidus has a variety of different forms, different aspects. I would say that perhaps the single most important component of Chassidic culture, this is not just Chassidic culture, it's really Chassidus, is joy. Baal Shem Tov created a movement of happy people. And if you know anything about Eastern Europe, they looked at happiness as an aveda. Not they looked at happiness as not necessary, not important. They looked at it as a bad thing. Why? Because the Gemara says that a person is not allowed to be happy and laugh in this world. In times of Golus, not even a lot of smiles, what people will say, let alone laugh and dance. The Gemara? Where's the Gemara? I think it's in Masechta Bava Basra, but I'm not sure. There's certainly halachas in Bava Basra about not being b'simcha after the Churban. And the Baal Shem Tov changed that. And you can't learn it. I could learn it. Baal Shem Tov did it, it's okay. But it was a revolution that use as a foundational component of their life joy. Baal Shem Tov himself was a happy man. And he made everybody around him happy. He wanted Simcha. Because the Simcha is not Chassidus, it's an expression of Chassidus. And you could say it two ways. Simcha gets you to your neshama, and Simcha is an expression of the fact that you've gotten to your neshama. And it's a definition of a chassid. The definition of a chassid is a freiliche mensch. We, Lubavitcher Chassidim, refuse to accept, I know you, okay, no more apologies, that anything changed since Gimel Tammuz. We're the same people, same Rebbe, same Chassidus. Now I'm supposed to say blah, 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 blah. And we are, remarkably so. But there are certain areas where you see the lack of the physical presence of the Rebbe very acutely. I would say the place which is an undeniable fact is no area is the lack of the physical presence of the Rebbe felt more acutely than in Shidduchim. The Rebbe made Shidduchim so easy. He made all the decisions. I mean, he made it look like he made all the decisions. Is it good, is it bad, should I trust, should I not trust? The Rebbe said, yeah, gay, stop it. But there's other things that are subtle and nuanced. And one of them is positivity. The Rebbe did not let us look at the world and look at our life as bad. But the whole world screams it and screams it and screams it. When what's the opposite of an optimist? Anybody know that cliche? What's the opposite of an optimist? The answer that you're supposed to give, the opposite of an optimist is a realist. No pessimist says, I'm a negative person. I'm just warning you, you should be careful. I'm warning you, if you're not going to be careful, you're going to get hurt. Wherever you go. And we're becoming pessimistic. Lubavitch is becoming pessimistic. That's anti-Rebbe on a fundamental, it's anti-Baal Shem Tov. Now, nobody ever said that positive is stupid. Nobody said that positive is naive. But positive is work. It's much easier to fall into the trap. I don't know how. I have a cell phone. And my cell phone has 101 blocks, and I need another 1,000 blocks. Every day I have to block something else. Okay, I try to be very careful. Okay, somehow I got on the news. I get news 4 or 5 times. I get a news bulletin. Someone was killed, and someone was shot, and someone was beaten up, someone was robbed. It's unbelievable. There's never any good news. And they get these flashes. I open my phone. You can't go right there until you read this piece of Lashon Hara. Now, what's the truth? What's the truth of life? The truth of life is that for every bad thing that happens in the world, there are hundreds of good things. Hundreds. A person's about to walk into a moving car and someone grabbed them and pulled them back. It happens 100 times a day. How come it's not in the news? It's boring. News people have one interest. 1 second. What is the interest of news people? Anybody know what's the interest of news people? Read me. Pay attention to me. I make a living because you read me. So I have to say what's going to get the most people to listen to what I'm saying. Fear. The greatest motivator in the world, for those who don't know, is hate. The second most successful motivator in the world is fear. The whole Chassidus comes down to don't be afraid. You have a life with Simcha. And I'm telling you that this is a place where you see Lubavitch people who really think they're connected to the Rebbe. They're becoming slowly, they're allowing themselves to look at the world pessimistically and negatively. And if you call them out on it, what do they say to you? Ooh, you're dangerous. You're not realistic. You don't understand what's going on. And if you're not careful, the world is going to come to an end. Mamish ein kledigkeit. The Rebbe was far more aware than you and me of all the negativity in the world. And he warned us when he needed to. But his whole Metzius was Simcha. And the father of that was the Baal Shem Tov. You want to be a chassid? Rule number 1. Figure out how to be happy. And by the way, it doesn't make your life good. In other words, being sad doesn't make your life worse. Being happy doesn't make your life better. Being sad, right. Being sad is not going to make your life better. Being happy is not going to make your life worse. If a person, listen, everybody in this life is going to go through stuff. I can tell you. Life's not perfect. It is what it is. A chassid finds a way of not letting it get him down. Sometimes it's hard. It's a halacha rishoina in the first siman, in the first sif of Hilchas Chassidus. It's Simcha. Simcha is an expression that the Baal Shem Tov used to help us get in touch with our neshama. People who are able to be besimcha have an easier time being in touch with this Even Tev Shebakesed HaMelech, which motivates a relationship with the Eibush, which has no limits. It's beyond reason, beyond seichel whatsoever. This is one example. Another example, I have to keep track of the time. I have till 30, what time will I stop? Another example, which is very important about Shem Tov, is the whole idea of warmth. Warmth and joy are not the same. Warmkeit, hearts, emotion. The Baal Shem Tov wanted Chassidim to be passionate, to be warm about the Avodas Hashem. A lot of people say, you see this in all the cliches, and all the people who are studying Chassidus as outsiders, they say the difference between Chassidim and Misnagdim is mind and heart. It's not true. The difference between Chassidim and Misnagdim is not mind and heart. It's the difference between mind and soul. Misnagdim's center of life is the brain, Torah, the way it used to be. Chassidim's center of life is the neshama. But the neshama you don't see. What do you see? You see the culture. And the culture involves joy, and the culture involves a lot of emotion. Feeling, regesh. To be emotional, be passionate about Avodas Hashem. There's a very famous story with the Baal Shem Tov that he traveled to Frankfurt, to Germany, and he came into a big, beautiful shul, from shul, an Orthodox shul, and the Baal Shem Tov said, I can't stay in the shul. He said to him, why not? There's no room for me. He said, what do you mean, Rebbe? The shul's half empty. He says, the shul is full of Eisiyas Atera Vatfila. The shul is full of words and letters of davening and learning, and the words are filling up the room. They're not giving me any space. So the people said to the Baal Shem Tov, that's a wonderful thing. Walking out into the shul full of Eisiyas Atera Vatfila. The Baal Shem Tov said, nein, steht in Zehar. Reise. When you daven in and you learn, your words have to fly up to heaven. But to fly up to heaven, they need wings. And dafka 2 wings, it says Tanya Perek Mem. What are the 2 wings? One wing is Ahava, and the other wing is Yira. And when you are very exact in the kiyum mitzvahs, but there's no dechilu, there's no yira, and there's no rechimu, there's no avo, leiparcha la'ela, the shul is full of words because the people speak toita verter. In this shul, the people are very frum and they're very exact and they're very precise, but there's no chayes. And the Baal Shem Tov introduced the idea that Yiddishkeit has mit ha'islavas, mit ha'bren, mit ha'fire, with a lot of emotion. And it doesn't mean necessarily that the people are not smart, fakert. The Frierdiker Rebbe tells a story. Frierdiker Rebbe tells a story that in 1903, it was 120 years ago, yeah? In 1903, his father, the Rebbe Rashab, spent about 7 or 8 months in Vienna, and no one knew who he was. He was wearing a shlap. He didn't even wear a shtreimel. He just wore a hat, even on Shabbos. And he would go to different shuls. And on a Thursday night, he went to Chassidus shtibel, and there was a man sitting being Mavis Sedre. He was reading the Pasha, like you're supposed to read the Pasha, with Yiddish taich. Not with Taich, with Yiddish. So the Frierdiker Rebbe said, my father walked over to this Jew, and he was doing it with such a slav, so excited, so passionate. And the Rebbe Rashab walked up to this Jew and he started to talk, and the Frierdiker Rebbe said, I stood on the side and I prayed I would love to hear what they were discussing. So when they walked away, when they separated, the Rebbe Rashab said to him, this man is a big, big Talmud Chacham. And he's saying, like he's a poshtarid with so much slavos. It's not that if you're very emotional, it means you're not smart. Some of the smartest people, the biggest chassidim, got great herzen. They had great minds and they had great heart. And there was a great emphasis on regesh, on being emotional, being passionate, being exciting. And there's many, many explanations. In the Tanya, the explanation is, the reason you have to be emotional is because the emotion is the language of the Yetzer Hara. The emotion is the language of the Nefesh HaBahamis. And you gotta speak the language of the animal that he should understand also, that he should daven also. So when you go out into the street, the animal shouldn't say, okay, the shul was yours and the street is mine, because you schlepped them into the shul. And when you go out into the street, the emotions that you inspired during the davening give you the koyach to fight with the Yetzer Hara when you're, so to speak, in the Yetzer Hara's arena. And the Baal Shem Tov gave great primacy to the idea of regesh, of being emotional. That's a second point. And the third point, and this is impossible to say enough, especially today, unfortunately, the Baal Shem Tov was obsessed, was crazy about pure faith. Emuna tahira. I mean, I say this as a cliche. I have no source for it, but it's true. The Baal Shem Tov says, these are my words now, I will trade in 1 ounce of faith for 1,000 pounds of wisdom and knowledge. We give so much priority to Emuna. Your lifestyle, the way you were raised, is predicated on this more than anything else. That your relationship with the Eibishter should not be complicated. Your relationship with the Eibishter is not about how smart you are and how much you figured him out. It's Emuna Tahoira, pure faith. Faith has to be pure. Faith cannot be deep and heavy and burdensome. And it's a yesod in Chassidus. And people therefore look at Chassidus and say they're a little bit naive. You know what we say to that? In Mitzvah Hashem naive for 120 years. Somebody asked the Rebbe, Rabbi Schneerson, how could a person as intelligent as you believe in God? Someone met the Rebbe and talked to the Rebbe. It's what kind of genius he was. Whatever you talk, he knows. Medicine, politics, war, philosophy, science, whatever you know, he knows. And there's a moon like a klein kid. Someone said, how could a person who's as smart as you believe in the Eibishter? The Rebbe said, a moidim dekavod. Because it's a different skill set. The world tries to tell us that you can't come to Emuna without first figuring out in your brain. It's a fundamental falsehood. Faith has nothing to do with your brain. It's with your neshama. You got to give it voice. You have to give your neshama voice. When you teach a little child, boy or girl, about the Eibishter, and they have no problem with the Eibishter, that's not brainwashing. Even though that's what the world calls it. It's giving expression to the neshama. And as we get older and we get smarter, we have to keep that faith pure. And the brain stuff and the soul stuff has to be, first of all, separate. And second of all, the soul stuff has to always be ahead. It's the ikar. A human being is a human being. Not because he's so smart, but because he's connected to a conscience. He's connected to a depth which is bigger than his brain. And that's his neshama. And it's a yesod in Chassidus. It is, maybe, I said three things, each one is the most important one, yeah? Simcha is very important. Emuna is very important. Baal Shem Tov taught and inspired and created a derech, a way of life, a culture, where our emuna has to be so pure. It's not allowed to be adulterated, it's not allowed to be compromised, it's not allowed to be diminished an iota. And when you hear about how we are afraid of young, specifically young people, going to college and learning Chachmas Chitzenius, and you feel like the world is punishing you and they're making you suffer and they're ruining your life, it all comes down to what life is. And if life is being a Yidin Chosid, you cannot risk your Emuna drop for any advancement. This is the Shita. This is the Rebbe Shita. It's not mine. You can hate me, but it's his Shita. he invented it, not I. The idea that when it comes to Ruchnius, to purity, it has to be absolutely pure. Absolutely pure. Now what comes from this? What cultural form comes from this? What cultural form is connected to cultivating simple Emuna? Number one, the role of the tzaddik. Right? The Baal Shem Tov said, the tzaddik. A connection to a tzaddik. Not to a Talmud Chacham. The tzaddik is also a Talmud Chacham, but a tzaddik. And this is why people, by Chassidim, all kinds of Chassidim, and today by us also, we're constantly telling stories of tzaddikim. And dafke stories that have to do with miracles. Which is chitzonius. In Chabad, in the olden days of Chabad, that was a waste of time. Right? Chabad was about Chochmah Bina V'das, about depth, about pnimius, about neshama. But we're, the Lubavitcher Chassidim today are Paltiel, right? Our relationship with the Eibishter is based on simplicity, not on depth. And a critical part of that is being connected to the idea that this world is the Eibishter's, and whenever he wishes, he breaks the laws of nature, and we know it because we see it. It's called Nisim and Niflais. The stories of miracles that you tell about the Rebbe, it's not just making the Rebbe great, it's making the Eibishter great. And it's making your sense of the world different. It takes away a lot of that pessimism, I'm sorry, I said a bad word, that realism that the world tries to talk to you about. And it gives you a sense, this is God's world. We don't believe that God is greater than in the heavens. We believe that God's right here with us in the sewer, you understand? And he's the Balabayas here. And whenever he wishes, and he does it more often than you would care to acknowledge, he changes the teva, or he manipulates the teva to bring about good ends. And we all have such experiences, right? We call it Ashgacha Pratis. And sometimes it's not Ashgacha Pratis, it's Poshet Nisim and Niflais. It's supernatural. And those things that happen in our lives, we have to see them, we have to celebrate them, because they help us have an uncomplicated relationship with the Eibush, an uncomplicated Emuna. And that this is a foundational idea in Chassidus. Okay, it's a foundational idea in Chassidus that the Emuna of a Yid should be unadulterated, should be untouched, it should be pure. That's the third point. Now the boy side, this leads to something else. The very important part, you're not going to like this, but it's really the truth. A very important part of Chassidus is the lavush, where we dress. We dafka dress different. We dafka dress different, and we call our clothing holy. Now Chabad is the worst at that, as you all know. B'chlal, we're the worst at that, right? We don't wear shtreimel, we wear a fedora. We're still wearing kapotas, Baruch Hashem. Yeah, but the Rebbe was the one who got rid of the shtreim. The Rabbeim wore shtreimlach. The biggest Chassidim is to wear shtreimlach. The Rebbe Rashab, for whatever reasons, only wore shtreimel in Lubavitch. When the Rebbe Rashab left Lubavitch in 1915, he passed away in 1920, he stopped wearing a shtreimel. The Frierdiker Rebbe became a Rebbe, he didn't wear a shtreimel. The first time the Frierdiker put on a shtreimel was by our Rebbe's chassan. Until that point, he never wore a shtreimel. And the Rebbe never wore shtreimel. In fact, he didn't even wear one of those up hats. He wore a down hat. He's bad Rebbe. So many people said, Rebbe, you put on a shtreimel, you'll have so many more chassidim. The Rebbe said, you can keep those. I want the fraya. I don't need the bubba and the bells. I need the shem and atzoyin. I need the ones that are not going any place and I can look at a shtreimel. But in Chassidus, levush is important. Dress is very, very important. And I'm going to say it. It makes us different. Now, when you're young and with it, as they say in the culture, You don't want to be different. That's why for some people, some of the time, at this age in your life, you feel restricted by the levush. And I understand that. But you see, here's the thing. You're not a chassid because your father's a chassid and your mother's a chassid. You're a chassid because you're a chassid. When you're little, you're a chassid because your father's a chassid. You have to embrace these values. You have to make them your own. And you have to come to understand the value of chitzonius. The way you look is the way you act. Not always, not entirely, but to a great extent. The way you look is the way you perceive yourself. And by Chassidim, levush, which is a chitzoni shebechitzoni, dress is the superficial thing. Dress was very, very important. Because there was a belief that this chitzonius keeps the pnimius. It keeps the more meaningful things. The Simcha and the regesh and the Emuna is preserved by the chitzonius. I was at a Fabrengen with a Yid whose name was Scheinberger, Harav Scheinberger. His father was a Gerech Chassid, and he learned in the Shtiblach. Before the war, they didn't really have yeshivas. They learned in the Shtiblach. And he wanted to go learn in a proper yeshiva because he wanted to learn Lamdas. The problem was the proper yeshivas were not Chassidish, they were Litvische. So he came to the Gerer Rebbe, to the Imrei Emes, to Vamot Chav Ger, and said, I want to go learn in a proper yeshiva. And he says, why? What's wrong with the Shtiblach? It's because I want to understand Torah more deeply, and for this I need a real Rosh Yeshiva, and the Gerech Chassidim didn't have yeshivas. I want to go learn by the Misnagdim. And he gave him a hard time, but he says, on one condition, don't change one iota of your dress. You can go. And this man would later repeat that every time he'd come into Imrei Emes, he'd walk into his door. He'd look him up and down, look at his shoes, look at his socks, look at his pants, make sure, you know, I'm just going to finish with a moiden de kamaise about lavush. A moiden de kamaise about lavush. A beautiful story about dress. Lavush means dress. An awesome story about dress. There was a rich chassid who traveled for business to the West. He traveled business to Western Europe, Germany, France, whatever. And he felt very weird because he was wearing these Eastern European clothing, the bekish, the kapata, but until their ankles. And he was dressed very different. The Eastern European Jews and Western, very different dress. He was a big chassid, he was a big baltstocker. He was basically the supporter of his particular denomination of Chassidus. So he decided that when he travels, he'll dress more modern. And when he comes back to where his Chassidim, his friends live, he'll dress like the Chassidim do. For years he did this. He would travel to the West, he'd change his outfit. But he made sure that on the train, before he got to the stations, where there's a possibility that he'd meet some of his own people, he'd put on the Chassidish dress. He did this for years. And then one day he says, I feel like a phony baloney bluffet. I'm going to come to my Rebbe in the modern dress. So he showed up in the town of his Rebbe, wearing a shorter jacket and a different hat and so on. And the Vateihem Kolir, the Chassidim were beside themselves. Anyway, he went into the Rebbe took one look at him, and his Rebbe said to him, until now I thought you were trying to fool the world. Now I see that you were trying to fool us. Okay, I'll see you when I see you. Okay, good morning.